Tredsky.
Here.
Mathias.
Here.
Bosco John.
Here.
Split.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I move to approve the agenda. I'll second.
Motion and second. Any discussion on the agenda?
In 2025.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes from January 15th meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They're approved. All right, coming to our first action item. This is a CSM for 433 Scott Street in the city. This is anyone from that project in the audience here? No. Okay. So as you see in your packets, it's taking a former, that one?
Yeah, so this is a City of Ripon property. We have a development agreement in place for this property on Scott Street. The property abuts the Union Hall, and there's railroad tracks to the west. The development agreement calls for the parceling off of 4 buildable lots, so these are about a quarter acre apiece, and then the remnant parcel remains and is yet to be figured out what happens to that parcel. But these 4 lots would be then built upon by the developer as single-family homes.
John?
I'll make a motion to approve the CSM for 433 Scott Street.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the CSM for 433 Scott Street, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is approved. Tversky LLC. This would be for a planned unit development with an R3 base zone, rezone of the property. The time is 7:07. I will open the public.
Good evening. Everyone hear me okay? And in the back, we have Travis Blasey, our planning specialist. And then here's the rest of our wonderful team that works out of our corporate headquarters in Mosinee, Wisconsin. A little bit about us. We are a housing provider and community developer. We offer planning throughout Wisconsin, as you can see here. We currently manage over 3,000 apartment units in the state. Our company upholds an average occupancy rate of 95% on all of our stabilized properties. This parcel is the perfect landscape for a future community filled with people at all stages of life. Whether you're a young professional or a senior, it's a perfect place to build lasting memories and be part of a community. Zoning for the project, complementing the traditional zoning district while utilizing the PUD overlay to allow for greater density. The zoning fits with the city's strategic plan to address the current and future housing needs of Ripon. For convenience and ample parking of 3 spaces per unit. As an amenity, we're offering a community outdoor space for tenants to gather and relax.
Going more in, those are 1-story apartment buildings, and they will have individual driveway accesses, as well as each unit will have individual roll-out trash service. Our primary entrance to our other multifamily units is to the south of our site. This is where our on-site leasing staff will be working from. This office is where tenants will access their mail, and to the south of that office, we've included a community patio for tenants to use. Driving into the site to the west is our 2-story Huntington building, and that is our detached garages for those buildings. This site has been specifically designed to consider snow removal, garbage pickup, and mail delivery. And then here's a bird's eye. Here's an aerial view from Pleasant Street. You can see our main entrance into the multifamily site. And then this rendering showcases the view from Village Lane and Pleasant Street at that intersection. And then here's an additional aerial view from the east. And then as previously mentioned, we've included a community patio area to the site specifically for tenants to use. So then to go a little bit more in depth on the buildings that we selected for the site, this is our Huntington building. It's a 2-story apartment building with 8 units. We have one of these buildings on the site. All of the units are 2 bedrooms. They include private entrances and in-unit laundry, as well as all of the apartment units on the site. This building includes stainless steel appliances and attached single-car garages. This building offers various different floor plan styles. We have upper units, and then in the back there are townhome style. And then here's a back of the rendering showcasing. They have individual patios for those townhome style units in the back. Another building style we have on the site is our Fulton building. This is a 2-story building that's 20 units. It comes in a variations of 1, 2, and 3. And the units have single stories, so you're either an upper or a lower. Each unit includes private entrances, in-unit laundry, and a balcony or a patio area. These units are offered at a lower price point in comparison to the other 2 buildings because they have a detached single-car garage. And then there's the back of that building. And then the last multifamily building on the site is our Bedford building. We have one of these buildings in a 4-unit style and then the other 2 in a 6-unit. These are 2-stall garages with private entrances and backyard patio spaces. And then these units have upgraded stainless steel appliances, and then you can see in this rendering the private backyard patio spaces with those privacy dividers. And then lastly, we have a leasing office on site. This building is where our property management staff will work out of, and mail will be. And then here are some images from our already built apartment units. These images closely reflect some of the finishes that we've selected for this site. And as you can see, we provide ample storage, lighting, and then high quality materials and fixtures.
Our apartments become part of our portfolio, so we are invested in taking care of our assets. We utilize our own maintenance teams to perform all of the regularly scheduled maintenance items listed here quickly and efficiently. Our leasing teams are highly experienced and professionally trained, so all rental applicants go through a comprehensive screening process, offering peace of mind that your neighbors went through the same income, background, and credit review processes that you did. SCS offers many conveniences online, such as virtual tours, online payments, and maintenance requests. Our rent rates are very inclusive, so they include heat, water, sewer, cable, and Wi-Fi. The tenant only receives 1 bill for electricity, which is quite small because Swiderski covers the heat portion of that bill. And we just want to thank you for allowing us to share our proposed SCS Ripon project with you tonight. Our apartments would be the perfect addition to your thriving community. With a vacancy rate of under 1%, we're confident in the demand for housing in Ripon, and we're excited to have an opportunity to be a part of the solution. We're here to answer any questions that you may have about the development. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So at this time, I'll ask Adam to go over the findings of the engineering review of the property.
If it will load, here we go. So I handed out earlier this information regarding the proposed project. It kind of mirrors the overall presentation by SCS Swiderski regarding the 64 units on the 6.5 acre site. It's a city-owned parcel, and preserving about 3.25 acres of green space on the site. We are looking at a planned unit development. The history of the site was a planned unit development overlay going back to 2007 and 2008. And it also includes the entirety of TID number 7. TID number 7 is currently in its payback period and cannot assume any more project expenditures, and currently sits at about a $900,000 deficit due to the lack of growth and development in that TID over the last 18 plus or minus years. This was looked at first point as an outlot and a mixed-use planned unit development. In your packet, there is a map here that, if I can turn, shows the original plat that includes this outlot 3 here, and then what has become the Sandmar development with primarily R1 single-family development. The initial PUD that the city approved was reflected in this area here, or this map here. The initial intention was a park development at the site, with phase 1 being single-family residential, phase 2 being assisted living and commercial, phase 3 being commercial, as well as then multifamily in the area. So the overall 92-acre site had about 37.4% park, 27.7% commercial business, and about 34.9% residential. Obviously, this has not transpired as planned, but this just gives the historical context of what the intention of the overall site was. The city did some housing studies over the past couple years, as well as park master planning. Those park master plannings and the TIF district outside of its expenditure period never led to the development of the site as a park, and the Parks and Rec Committee declined to undertake park development on the parcel as part of the comprehensive park master planning in 2022. In June of 2023, an initial development agreement with SC Swiderski was approved by the Common Council to do a project of this nature. The city has comprehensively reviewed the site plan and submitted documents. There is a significant number of documents that came in and were shared publicly regarding the project, including site plans, landscaping plans, all of that. You can see here comments about stormwater management. There has been a history of stormwater management issues within the development. We've reviewed that, and this project would utilize the regional retention pond, and it has been determined by MSA that the regional retention pond is adequate to receive flow from this development, and that continued development in the area could utilize the pond. There's also a map provided to you kind of summarizing the drainage of the area as it was designed, including this area, my arrow here, being the stormwater swale that this property would discharge into, that then discharges into the pond. There is a second outfill or outfall to the north, and then there is a swale to the south that bypasses the pond and takes on water to the south and from generally phase 2 of the original development, which are the apartments here. The on-site stormwater, you can look at that later, but generally speaking, a couple recommendations there regarding on-site, including doing calculations for a 100-year storm versus a 10-year storm, and the removal of a culvert on Rogers Road due to it being undersized. There's a 5-foot box culvert under Pleasant Street and a 12-inch culvert under Rogers Road. That just doesn't really make sense. Zoning, the current zoning is in R1. The entire district, planned unit development was zoned R1 at some point. So this is recommended the underlying zoning district be R3 with the PUD overlay. There is a landscaping plan. PUD zoning does not require that they meet the landscaping plan, but we did request that SC Swiderski meet or try to achieve the R3 landscaping plan, which I believe they have notes on in their presentation, or their plans. Beyond that, there's additional 20 street trees that could be planted. Utility plan has been reviewed. Fire department has reviewed locations of hydrants. No issues. Photometric has been reviewed by building inspection and has no issues with it. Ingress and egress plan has been reviewed by the fire department with no issues and allows access to Rogers Road if there's an extension of the road. Ultimately, the development agreement that was approved by the Common Council sells the property to SCS for $1 and supports TID utility relocations on the site. The development agreement outlines approximately $8.8 million of spending and a minimum assessed value of $5 million on the parcel. And it is tied to TID number 16, which the city is currently developing as a project plan to assist with the project costs associated with the STS Ripon project and other infrastructure, park, and broader economic development efforts in this area. That is a summary of the review provided by staff of the submitted plans.
Thank you. All right. At this time, I will welcome the public here to give their comments. I do ask that you keep it on topic and try to keep your comments within 3 minutes. I apologize, I can't read all of your handwriting, but I think I got all the first names, so I'll call you up by first name and address. Before you start speaking, please state your full name and address for the record. I have Mary at 559 Ardmore. And if you could speak into the mic, I'd appreciate it.
I just have to adjust it, so
That's
it's like not in my, so I can see what I'm doing. My name is Mary Mellentine. My husband James and I live at 559 Ardmore Avenue, and we've been at this address in Ripon since August of 1990. Our home is one of several homes along the north side of the pond in the Sandmar subdivision. We have seen a number of floods in this area well before the Sandmar subdivision was created. This happens for two reasons. First, this area collects water from more than 750 acres to the south. And second, there is an intermittent river, which has been clearly noted on older maps of this region. It was not unusual for flooding before the Sandmar subdivision to extend west for up to 2 blocks and beyond Pleasant Avenue. So that area has a long history of flooding. It certainly is, has been better since that pond has been there, but there is a ton of water that comes down into that area. And I think people really don't understand what happens with that intermittent river when it really starts to flow, because it really can flow. We have seen 2 significant flood events when roads had been roughed in for Phase 2, and Rogers Road created a spillway, bringing water down Ardmore Avenue, totally flooding the east end of the cul-de-sac. We had so much water that it was actually The second flood happened in 2019 after a rapid snowmelt. Drone video, which is available on YouTube, clearly shows water around the senior apartment building and the memory care facility. Water also extended north. You know, if that apartment complex would have been set there, they're actually, you know, the buildings would have been in water. I had an opportunity to speak with Gary Will, Ripon's mayor, during this time. Never finished, and appropriate-sized culverts were never put in. So unless, you know, this has changed, you know, the potential for flooding is still very great in this area. Additionally, because this area drains forward, if the ditches aren't right-sized and the appropriate-sized culverts aren't put in. Additionally, what will we use as backup water collection areas in times of heavy rains and rapid snowmelts, because we don't know when. And I think the year of 100-year floods should really be looked at as 500-year floods now, because they certainly are much more than that. Additionally, I have concerns about the maintenance of the drainage ditches and the culverts, including the culverts under the railroad tracks, since debris tends to accumulate in them during these heavy rains and storms I've raised. Additionally, I would encourage the City Council to meet with the former mayor and discuss these flood events to better understand what happened and to ensure that future development proceeds in a way that minimizes potential for future flooding. Clear that I understand the need for additional housing in our community and support its development, but I strongly feel that we are making a big mistake locating this apartment building in this area currently considered green space. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Amanda from 428 Sandmar.
I'm just here because I just wanted to know like what the plan was and.
You don't want to speak?
No, I don't.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Then looks like Bill from Street.
I guess I just want to say that when we approved that project, the development down there, they said we would have a park. And I guess I'm very concerned that they want to get rid of that park. It's a good place for the kids to play baseball. It just, and you know, there's no reason why there couldn't be more down there. There could be volleyball or whatever, basketball. The park is nice because it is a residential area there. I just hate to see them build apartments there. There's apartments on the far south end of Pleasant Street. There's no reason why they couldn't extend that Pleasant Street down past the cul-de-sac and build apartments down there if they want to. I hate to see them take our park away.
All right, Jerry from 518 Ardmore, if you could step forward, please.
Thank you. Jerry Eiler, 518 Ardmore. There have been 2 times when we've had serious basement flooding in our home. Both times were during periods of construction. One was when Murray Park School was built. The other was when the senior citizen building was built. The flooding did not happen because of water running, groundwater flow. It happened because water was percolating up through the basement floor. That area, the whole area has got a groundwater issue. Taking a look at just the storm flow is inadequate, in my opinion. We have a problem with groundwater level. I'm concerned that if this construction goes forward, that we will be replacing our basement again because we'll have water percolating up through the floor. It's not a drainage on the surface issue. The other concern that I have, I don't go to work too much anymore, but, you know, I was driving to work every day. When the school is either having students come in or going out, traffic in that area is terrible. I'm concerned that the traffic flow of this has been gone, well, it'll work, but not really looked at carefully. There's a lot of shortcuts through the high school, right, or the school right now to get to Oshkosh Fond du Lac. That whole traffic issue, I think, is being grossly under evaluated. It doesn't seem to me that that area was planned with adequate streets for a 65, 64 unit development. You're throwing that on top of residential roads that are, they're not extra wide, or, you know, they're just common roads. So I'm really concerned about groundwater flooding and the traffic in that area. I agree. I think that green space is necessary as a sponge. I think that area also, I mean, our kids use it. It's a good, even though it's not developed, that swing set has been a blessing to our family. But I think there's a better location for a large development like this. So, thank you.
Let's see. This one I can read. Matt Miller from 543 Ardmore.
Hey, Matthew Miller, 543 Ardmore. I came to speak out against this plan development as well. I agree wholeheartedly and can assure you that everything Mary Mellentine said is correct. I've lived at this residence. I bought it from my parents. I've lived there for 50 years come this June. I've seen everything Mary's talked about. It's all true. It's happened. The groundwater is unpredictable and a force to be reckoned with. The stormwater is the same story. When the pond was dug, they could not dewater the hole enough to ever finish the pond. I don't know if anybody here was, you know, on the council or the planning commission right now was present in Ripon or saw any of that. We lived next to it for a year. They had 2 pumps running 24/7 and could not dewater that pond to finish the pond. The pond was never completed. Gary Will, myself, met with Gus Glazer, who was a DNR pond and runoff water specialist at that time. He evaluated the pond and said it should have never been approved. It was not finished, and it was not adequate. And that was for 42 single-family homes and a CBRF, which was the original approval in phase 1. Since then, Kenwood has been added. Kenwood has flooded twice. Luckily, there was no injuries or loss of life. Now, the pond was supposed to be lined in a certain depth. It never was finished. Like I said, the pond fills itself because it has springs all through it. There are above ground springs that run into the pond, except when it's extremely dry, like this past, some of this past year and the previous. If you remember in 2003, it was tremendously dry. That pond never dried up. It got low, but it never dried up. Like the previous gentleman, I experienced flooding, like Mary said, in 2009 with the catastrophic flooding. Water was up to our house as well, and I had water in my basement. I am 100% sure that this type of event will happen again. We've been very fortunate, but, you know, the 100-year standard for flooding is not adequate anymore as far as engineering. Everything in Sandmar was probably engineered to the minimum requirement. I question whether the infrastructure, the sewer, the water pressure can handle 64 units. Again, having lived there, watched it built, watched how it was built, corners that were cut, I believe this is a drastic mistake. I want to see the green space remain. Nest out there, raise their young, deer play out there, children, people come play with their dogs. people come from other parts of the city and park and walk their dogs and play with their dogs. It's an asset as it is. It could be developed into something better. I'm sure the people that are spending a lot of money to buy new homes that are now being built in Sandmar after 18 years, of nobody being courageous enough to build a house there. We're counting on that space for their families and kids and friends. Now you're, proposing to take that away. I don't believe that's in the best interest of the city either. I think the city should continue to promote it as a 42-family, single-family residential neighborhood that it is and will be, and develop the green space into something you can be proud of. But I don't believe the apartment building is the correct placement there. I'm not against increasing housing in any way, but again, a better place should be found. Thank you.
All right, next looks like Cal from 1240 Rogers.
I'm here too for informational.
Okay, very good. Matt Wirch, 503 Ardmore.
Good evening, Matt Wirch, 503 Ardmore. So not really understanding the format of this, I assume it's a hearing for input only, but I have questions, and so the information that was shared tonight regarding the engineering study, because obviously the interest of the neighborhood is to manage this groundwater, and I've only been at 503 Ardmore for 2.5 years, but I can assure you that I'm a regular walker, and I have had to walk through water on Pleasant Street multiple times, and I've watched that field behind my house flood. So my ask is how can the council, or I should say, what is the council using from an engineering study standpoint to say that this correction, I think what I heard was to a culvert on Rogers Road, would be an adequate engineering change to manage the groundwater removal and this aquifer issue that was shared earlier, where we seem to have this water percolating out of the ground in that pond area and in basements in the area. So that wasn't made very clear to us tonight, or maybe the assumption is that the groundwater and I'm not a good not describing this very well, but the surface water that's very obvious to those that are in the area like myself. What is the plan besides this culvert change? The other part of it is that I think what I heard is a progression of change where this was a green space. I think houses and lots that are marketed in that area still represent it as a green space or park space. But it appears that the zoning has gone from that to an R1, and then the ask tonight is to go to an R3, and then the PUD overview. It would be interesting, for us to understand what concessions were made, or what is the difference between an R3 and a PUD, meaning what additional, what is the difference between those two zoning statuses, so we know that if that was going to be a continuation of the R1 community, I think that's straightforward because we're seeing that on the western side, but now on the eastern section that's going to be developed as this PUD, what's changing? I couldn't see that. Also interested in understanding outside of the water, which is obviously our biggest issue. Is there any sort of plan to manage things like light, so light pollution? So it is a very quiet neighborhood. The reason I was attracted to move to this area, I don't see information that was available to us online prior, but it would be interesting to know how that was going to be managed. I did hear things about noise control, garbage collection. Is there a strategy that wouldn't change the the neighborhood by having excessive amounts of equipment that comes in for snow removal, garbage removal, things of that nature. And then also the traffic pattern. I see in the plan where the driveway entrances are, so they seem to be somewhat dispersed, but to some of the other speakers' point, is there any sort of traffic study that was done to say, hey, would we need to change stop signs or change to intersections, walking patterns, because we have a school to the west and to the north? So just a lot of questions I have, and with my input, if that information could be made available to us so we'd better understand, really more the engineering side of this than anything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And last we have Michaela, 519 Ardmore.
Good evening. Michaela Hatfield, 519 Ardmore Ave. I just also have questions for you in regards to, they spoke about just it being accessible housing. My question would be, what percentage of our community needing housing can afford these units? I know there's been a lot of studies done on the need for housing and kind of what the income limits are. And it seems like for sure what the new housing developments have been are well above what our population, the needs are, and so just how we're handling that discrepancy. And then in regards to, Matt spoke about the traffic patterns, but as well as the sidewalks. Is there going to be needs for sidewalks to be put into our community? Will we be made aware of that? What's kind of the plan? I would also like information on that. And thank you for your work.
All right. Is there anyone else in the audience who has not signed up that would like to speak? No? All right. So the time is now 7:45. I will close the public hearing portion. And we'll open up discussion amongst council or commission members. And we'll probably have some questions for you. I don't know if you'd like to come forward to the table. Probably easier to answer questions as we go. You can have a seat. It's fine. All right, so I would like to answer some of the questions that were brought up tonight by the public. Adam, do you have the numbers on the housing study available? Comparable rents? And while he's looking that up for SC Swiderski people, what is your estimated price range for these units?
Yes, so the units will start keeping in mind that it includes heat, water, cable, sewer, and Wi-Fi. They begin at $1,040 and they stretch all the way to $1,875. So there's a big range. And as market rate rental units, we look to meet 60 to 120% of the median income of your community.
I can just add that percent vacancy rate in single family homes and a 0.5% vacancy rate in housing. When it comes to apartments, it's looked at as $1,074 is looked at as a median annual rent based on the median household income in Ripon. And anybody that's making 80% or greater of the average median income or annual median be able to afford that median price. So at $1,074, anybody making approximately $47,000 a year based on the 30% rule of affordable rents within Ripon currently. The majority of rents are within the 500 to 99, just under 1,000. And then there's a few above 1,000 to 1,499. And the last market rate apartment complex that was built, I believe, was about 15 years ago. So there hasn't been a new market rate apartment built in Ripon or since I believe Cobblestone or Stanton Street, one of those areas. So, so that's what the data shows within the housing study regarding affordability and rental rates within Ripon.
Thank you. Let's see here. I know with the light pollution, your company did submit a light plan, and it was approved and meets all of our zoning requirements. So that is something that was definitely looked at and does meet our requirements for light pollution in neighborhoods.
I can pull up the plan.
A lot of plans.
So here is kind of the photometric plan of the property with mostly, lighting affixed to the buildings, and is reviewed by building inspection based on the code, and did not warrant any comment or concern regarding light pollution off of the site.
So having seen some of your other projects, your lighting is mostly facing inward towards the parking and not on the back sides of the buildings that would be exposed to the rest of the neighborhood, correct?
Correct.
Lud, would you like to cover the differences between the types of zoning?
Certainly. Obviously, R1 is single family, and the R3 that is being proposed as the underlying zoning district suggests multifamily. So that's why the underlying zoning is being considered. It was a good question as to what does the PUD put in place. The PUD allows you to exceed the requirements of the underlying zoning because of the specific nature of the plan. And that's the idea of having a PUD. Some of the setbacks, some of the density, those things can be exceeded because of the PUD. So the PUD overlay is relevant, and that question is important. And certainly they're in the city ordinances for review, but at the end of the day, the understanding is what's being presented here is what is intended to be on that property. So it is a good question. Ultimately, the R3 zoning is relevant, but the PUD is more important. Exactly what is going to be placed in that site.
So would a fair description be if it was a, say, 1 acre lot that maybe a 6-unit or an 8-unit apartment building may be built in an R3, but because it's we are proposing a PUD to allow more buildings on a single parcel than would otherwise be allowed?
Correct.
As well as the history of this is a PUD. This was approved as a PUD.
If I may follow up, if you don't mind me, asking you for the requirement, because I'm looking at like our ordinance.
Yeah.
So if it's R3, if it's part of a PUD, it says 14 units per acre, and I'm assuming that's acreage in the whole lot, not just like the developed area, right?
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. Didn't have the ordinance.
The rest of the development currently is zoned R1, of the original, so all the way over to Matoman. So I think there was probably, when the PUD was submitted, currently, to Luke's point about the ordinance, those properties that the senior living and the senior housing apartments are on are not appropriately zoned. Those are R1. They should likely be R3, but I don't know what they did. Totally.
It's commercial.
Yeah.
All right. Are you familiar with the engineering package for your plans?
Correct.
Would you like to go over what was utilized for groundwater and just water flow through the property?
Yeah, I mean, groundwater doesn't have too many implications on us because we're at-grade structures, so we didn't have to do much subsurface investigation in regards to groundwater because we don't plan on having basements or anything of that nature. We did do geotechnical exploration. We could tell that, I think it was Mary was her name, to her point that, that was a, like a path of a previous intermittent waterway, and when they mass graded the site, that was essentially a fill area, so we will actually have to do quite a bit of over excavation to remove the historic fill and make sure that it's replaced. So when they bulldoze the site, they just probably push the extra dirt in that area. So we'll have to do a little over excavation, but our geotechnical exploration didn't really dive in on the groundwater very much. Regards to stormwater, I know Adam has reviewed and approved it as we've shown, but to MSA's review as well as the city review, they believe that the standards should be upped, to that 100-year threshold, which isn't standard. Typically, the DNR looks at a 10. So like I said, now we've had the city's input, MSA's input, and actually, I've had a chance to review that aerial imagery from 2019 through that, quick winter melt. And like I said, I can see the culvert that she's talking about under Rogers Road. We've been in communication about that, getting that upsized to handle a bigger water event. So we're going to collaborate with the city of Ripon on that, which isn't currently shown, but it's our intent. We try to get in front of you guys before the plans are, signed, sealed, and delivered, because we want to leave ourselves a little room to modify things. But just as is, the stormwater has gone to the DNR. They've reviewed it, approved it. But we still plan on meeting the request of MSA and the city to upsize, essentially over-engineer, for lack of a better term, that drainage swale and the culvert to ensure that we can get the water through there. And then the drone video I referred to, she's mentioned about a third of the lot was underwater, and that area will actually be about 5 feet higher. The spot that was underwater was the closest to the drainage ditch there. Compared to the grade that's currently there, that part of the lot will be 5 feet higher, like our building finished floor elevation. So just in general terms, that area, because from north to south, it slopes, higher to lower elevation as it goes towards that ditch. So the northern edge of the site, that'll be pretty much at grade as it is currently, but that southern portion, we will be building that up quite a bit, to our building elevations. So with increasing the grade there, improving the size of the culvert there, and I know there's a 500-year event mentioned, but like I said, even a 100-year event is over-engineered to what the DNR standards are. Like I said, our engineers review, your engineers review, feel that the 100-year threshold should be adequate to manage any of the stormwater there. And like I said, any of the flooding that had been seen, at least in 2019, I couldn't speak to the 2009, what event caused that, but in 2019 there, when it seemed like the culvert was the limiting factor from getting the water to the pond, we'll make sure that we get that addressed, so.
And you are planning on owning and operating this facility?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we don't just build. Yeah, we're essentially fully integrated. We're on the front end with development, and we also general contract the buildings. Like I said, we own it long term, so we're doing the leasing, the maintenance. So we have, high importance placed on the integrity of the buildings, the maintenance of the buildings, the longevity of the buildings, because they're an investment to us that we plan to keep for a long time. So
you're not intending to let your own buildings flood?
Correct.
John?
Does all the stormwater in that area go to the culvert and then out across the railroad?
Yeah, for our site, yes. Yeah, I mean, I know she had mentioned like 750 acres, so I know that, collects in there. And I'm sure of that 750 acres, there's certain facilities that do have their own stormwater catchment basins or things of that nature. But, so I can't necessarily speak to the overall watershed, but yeah, I know for our site, there'll be some of the northern, sites, and even along the western edge there, those driveways will shed onto Pleasant and Rogers, but in general terms, the majority of the water on our site will be collected on our site and then conveyed to the drainage ditch there, which will ultimately ends up in the pond.
Does the Sandmar itself, Village Lane and Sandmar Drive, does that stormwater collect and go that same way, or does that go a different way? Do we know that?
The very south edge of the Sandmar development has its own ditch that gets routed around the pond and under the tracks. But most of the development to the north goes into the pond first.
Okay. And then Ardmore, they don't have curb and gutter, do they?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah, I believe they do.
No sidewalks, you do have curb, okay. So that has stormwater collection in that area, somewhat.
We have had issues, right? But yes.
Okay.
And I think Hope has had issues too.
Yes. Pardon?
Hope Street has had issues as well.
Okay.
Do we know the drainage from Ardmore and Hope, where those go? Because if Sandmar goes to the pond, is the same true for Ardmore and Hope? Do we know that?
Ardmore drains to the pond.
That's my assumption, so.
It does.
Yeah.
All right.
Hold on one second.
But again, yours won't go to the pond. It'll go bypass the pond?
No, it goes to the pond.
It will go to the pond.
Correct.
Their south ditch. I had a note just on the DNR's minimum requirement. If it is 10 years, I don't know exactly what it is. It might be 10 or 25 year. But my opinion on that is that you don't build a house for 10 years or 25 years. You build a house for 50 to 80 years. So why would you ever calculate just to a 10-year or a 25-year storm when the building in all hope is going to be there, right? So, administration has worked with MSA to ask for the 100-year calcs. I think that's probably the minimum, especially for a new development. Lots of families, lots of pre-existing houses around. It just seems like that's the right thing to start at is 100-year and make those evaluations based on that. Just.
Did you have more of that?
I gotta log in, so sorry.
Do you mind if I ask another question? Just a question on the rent, because you mentioned it was like 1,040 and up to 1,875. Can you just explain the different rates based on the different units?
Yeah, so our Fulton buildings, those will start off, and Madeline kind of mentioned in our presentation, those have the detached garages, those are going to be the lowest rent rates, but those do start at $1,040, and they're going to go up to about $1,400 for those. They have several different sizes, so it's really going to be based on the unit size. And then as you move over to our Huntington, that's going to be kind of in the middle. So that one's going to be about in the $1,200 to $1,400 range as well. And those are townhomes and they have attached garages. So those are definitely sought after. And then the more expensive units will be the Bedfords. Those are the single level. Those are the ones that are coming off Village Lane there. Those live like a home. So they have a 2-car garage and they have the upgraded finishes. So those are going to run, those are going to be up to that top point, that 1875. So they're going to go about 1650 to 1875 for those, because there's a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom, so there's a different rent rate for that.
And is that what we're going with, like the current market rate, not with, what will
today.
be? Yeah, that'll be today, so expected when it is completed, which, I see the commencement date, but I don't see expected
Yes, the
completion
It
date.
would be the end of 2026.
Okay.
So, Can't really attest to what it would be like then, but as of today, that's what it would be.
And then during the completion process, is there no one moving in at all during that process until all units are done and then they move in, or is it periodically?
They actually can move in when the buildings are ready to open. So as soon as we have them ready to open, we'll get people moved in. We do have a waiting list, so we take interest in that manner. You can go on our website and sign up even now to be a part of the construction process and find out when they're going to open. And we strategically open them so that it's the least amount of interference as possible for those moving in. So if, someone wants to move into a Fulton, let's say we were to start with that, and there's construction going on, we just try to strategically open the building that makes the most sense on the site.
But you essentially start all the buildings near the same time, and as they finish, you rent them out.
Actually, I don't believe we start them at the same time, Travis. Do you know
No,
that?
not necessarily. I mean, because you don't want to open the soil up and then have it get compromised by rain or what have you. So yeah, it's typically 2 to 3 buildings at a time we'll tackle, and then once you get it, dried in, you'll move on to the next one, essentially, so we typically use the same contractor. If it's concrete, I'll get concrete guys, and like I said, we just kind of based it around their availabilities and capabilities. But yeah, I know the biggest thing is, your subgrade, having that soil exposed, I said if it gets wet, it could compromise it. So like I said, you pretty much, as soon as you get your slab prepped, you want to get it poured and everything right away. And yeah, it usually goes like dominoes, but yeah, it's not every single building moving at the same stage at one time. It's kind of sequenced, or the plumbers can go from one building, the next building, and just keep rolling.
When you finish this foundation, you start working.
Exactly. Yep.
So I can just touch on some of the background of stormwater management. Obviously, we are aware that there is a history of flooding events in the area. This is the infrastructure that is under the ground from stormwater pipes on Hope and Ardmore, Village Lane, and Sandmar. So generally speaking, this developed property all the way through here drains through this system to this outfall here. In addition to that, we reviewed the original design. MSA had the files that were submitted during the development of this property by Excel Engineering and Montgomery and Associates, going back to developing the site, as well as all correspondence in the files regarding DNR. So our Public Works Department and MSA, our engineer, have reviewed the site. So, this is the watershed that goes into this area here, and then it outfalls here. There is an additional map here that kind of describes it. I'm sorry, it's an 18-inch culvert here, not a 12-inch. But there is a culvert here, flows this way. This is the drainage swale. There's stormwater that comes through here as well, off of Sandmar, this area. And this existing property flows into this swale already.
And that's the southern line of the proposed development.
Yep, this is the southern line of the proposed development. Everything to the south moves along areas like through here to the south and around. So there is a diversion to the south. There's been a history of flooding more recently in this area in 2018 and 19, I believe, where water backed up because it was jammed up or not maintained. There's a lot of history here. We have sat down and talked with Rick Reed, the developer of the site, and the challenges with stormwater. Some of the issues he's had with contractors and maintaining these areas. The city has taken a more proactive approach to maintaining these areas since some of those flooding, where we review these areas regularly. We photograph them. The city also has a easement to maintain the drainage way coming off of these developments on the east side of the railroad. So there's an existing easement that we have on this right here. The pond is currently a private pond. It is owned by Sandmar Development, and from a flow and a suspended solids, like a quality perspective, the pond is adequately sized to serve the development. Obviously, you know, there have been storm events there. Some of them are more related to this side of the project where this drains toward this swale. And if there is not a maintained culvert, or it's blocked or whatever, and these areas are not maintained, you are not going to have flow and you're going to have backing up. So MSA put together a comment about the flow and that. DNR has looked at the NOI that has been submitted for the project, which they have not, which they've issued the NOI. And generally speaking, the creation of a TIF district in this general area, the project plan will call for dollars to address stormwater issues in the developed area into the future, as well as the maintenance of this drainage way out of it. Because there are wetland areas in this area here. Those are wetlands. They've been wetlands for many years. And really what it comes down to is pre-developed site, right? What did it do pre-development and what does it do today? And I believe there's been indications, and the overall utilization of this pond has helped with some of the stormwater in the developed area. So there's capacity there, and the water from the property, although it's a green space, does already flow to the property. So the conclusions drawn by MSA are based on the engineered plans by Excel Engineering, Montgomery and Associates, everybody that has done the work on this property and in this area for the last 15, 20 years.
May I ask a clarifying question about the water flow? There seems to be a contradiction. I don't want to be improper in terms of...
No, it's fine.
There's a depression on the back lot lines of the Sandmeyer Drive properties to the south where water flows from west to east. This gentleman, and then it flows along the southern edge of the proposed development property.
Yep, right here.
This gentleman stated that there was going to be an elevation of the grade on the south side of the property when he was talking about the groundwater. So if we're elevating the grade on the south side of that property and you now have water flowing from west to east in that depression, where is that water going to go now? Because right now it's going from west to east along those southern lot lines in that depression.
Are you talking like right here, Betsy? Like right through here? Here's Sandmar Drive.
Okay, yes.
So the water flows
that
through here.
depression, then it keeps going, it keeps going into the pond.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll still keep going that same direction. I mean, like just to the north of your cursor there, I mean, that's kind of the low points right there, and that's kind of the area I'm talking about. That'll be brought up. But I saw that water is still going to be captured and conveyed into the ditch, but it's not going to steer, or, you know, we're not like redirecting the ditch by any means. So I'm not saying we're raising the ditch or anything, but it's like once you get outside of the ditch, that'll be the point that we're elevating the site.
Now, looking at your grading plan, it looks like the drainage ditch stays exactly how it is and you begin grading just north of that drainage.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, you can find the grading plan on there. It's kind of hard to see because you get so many lines on the grading plan, but you can kind of see where the current elevations are compared to the proposed.
So what's the difference in elevation then?
Well, our finished floor will be about 5 feet higher on that southernmost building there. It's about 5 feet higher than what's currently there.
So is there going to be a retaining wall?
No, there'll be a little riprap. That's like by the driveway there. There'll be some riprap that we'll have in place there. But yeah, no retaining wall. The rest of it, it'll all be seeded grass, that whole area there. Like I said, that one area where his cursor is, or it's a little bit checkerboard, or that'll be riprap right there.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that term.
It's just like a bigger stone, like
Okay.
larger, you know, so that it doesn't erode or wash out or anything like that. The slope would just be a little dramatic where it could wash, so then you just put the riprap stone in there and then the soil doesn't erode or anything.
Okay, thank you.
So I think the point is though, the water today enters the proposed development.
Drainage system in it. So it is an underground piping system.
To address what Betsy's asking about first, this is the edge of the proposed building here, and that is 4 feet higher than the lowest point indicated before it's in the ditch, the culvert. And the scale is, I can't tell, probably about 20 feet or so based on the depth of the building, 24 feet, 25 feet. So you have a 4-foot drop over 20 feet from the back of the building to where the culvert is existing right here. And that flows out and then into the pond. And that piece is existing. So barring any changes of the proposed development, that's what is shown in the plan.
Technically, it's past time for the audience to ask questions.
It's fine. That's right. So, and then the project, including in the parking lot area that convey water then out to the outfall by the south end of the property.
With MSA for all of the new hard impermeable parking area, the roofs and everything from that.
Correct.
So when the city and MSA sat down and are recommending, you know, the redoing of the culvert and everything, that was with the 100-year, including the changes of the impermeable and roof and everything. So just for a point of clarification, that even if the site is modified, the calculations are being asked for the 100-year with the modified site. So you can maybe think of that as you're kind of wearing a belt and suspenders because you have drainage for your hard areas in your controlled storm drain here, but then you also have to size what they are now or for what we've already seen. So anything that misses the storm drainage is going to flow naturally the way it is right now into culverts and ditches into the pond. And that's how the calculations are done.
History of, generally speaking, all of these culverts being undersized for the amount of water going through them and then being put in before there's a developed site needing, or roadway. There's just basically rock through here, right, on some of these areas that were unmaintained over a period of time. Removing the 18-inch when they're, that design just doesn't make sense.
It's funny you bring that up because I've walked back in those fields and these ditches are, that 18-inch culvert can't handle the water. It kind of shows you that, yes, there's a lot of water moving through there, but the ditch, the culvert isn't what was stopping it. It was where the road was built up and basically making a dam and I think pushing water back to the west, which is just to the point of yeah, those are undersized and inappropriate for what we know goes on back there.
Was there any consideration by like MSA and the engineers with any sort of runoff and discharge from like the town of Ripon properties like Penny Lane over there? Because I know it's not included at all in there, and I don't know how that would impact the pond, but I didn't see that included in any of their images.
Generally speaking, for this developed area, they used the current stormwater area that is being served by this pond. So anything to the south is generally moving toward is intended to go south of that. So the developed area that was reviewed was the area using these ditches and using these drainage tubes.
I guess just to move the discussion along. I have probably 3 concerns on it. The first one is the flooding and stormwater stuff. I don't know if I have the right assurances on that yet, but we've belabored that for about an hour, so I won't focus on that anymore. My second concern is the traffic. I don't think we've adequately addressed the traffic, especially with kind of where the in and out flow of the apartment complex with relation to Pleasant Street, because I mean, the school traffic over there, especially during drop-off for parents, is pretty crazy. A lot of parents, especially if they have elementary and middle school kids, they go through middle school, they drop off, and they fly by that way to head over to Barlow. So I don't feel like we've at least touched on that topic. And then just lastly, which is part of our consideration when we have a PUD, is considering adjacent developments in that area, which we already have the Sandmar development there, and I don't know if adequate consideration has been given. So I don't have the assurances on the first issue and the second issue, and the third issue, I just think there has to be additional consideration. So right now, I'm probably a no on moving forward with this PUD.
John? That's really my same concern is the traffic. Everybody's coming out on Sandmar Drive to Matoma Street, and you got 64 units. It could be as many as 128 cars, I would imagine, or right around 100. We could never cross the railroad tracks to the east, can we?
No, that wouldn't be.
So that's out going to the east.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out a way to get a different route to Matoma Street, but there really is nothing besides Sandmar Drive and then going down Pleasant Street. And then besides that, once that's done with, before that, I'm concerned with if you guys thought of an alternative way to get in for construction equipment.
Yeah, on the site plan, you'll see we have a construction driveway tied into, what am I bringing for? The road, this Rogers Road there that's not actually built yet, so that's a temporary construction access. And then long-term, it gives us the option, once that road is built out by the city, that we can have a secondary driveway there. Like any of the grading that we do in that area will likely leave in place. It'll get seeded down and mowed like a regular, like the rest of our lawn would, but it would provide us a secondary driveway once Rogers Road would get finished, so.
I'm more concerned about how you get into that.
Yeah, so I'll just take a step back too, and part of the development of this site is the creation of a TIF district, which you're seeing a model that is going to be proposed, and you will have depending on this development moves forward, you'll have a plan commission meeting that talks about a TIF district. Part of that TIF district has projects identified in it, including this site here. In addition to that, the other infrastructure and ideas that are project plan eligible expenditures would be the extension and completion of Ringstead in the area. That would be a secondary access point. In terms of timeline for that to get done, that would be contingent upon some of the well infrastructure we're looking out in that area as well. So if this project does move forward, there has been consideration made in the long-range planning of the TIF district to fund the extension of Ringstead back to Matoman.
Would it be possible to put in a temporary road to get the construction equipment in and then go to the building site?
I think through this area here?
Yeah.
Aren't there houses right there?
There's a house right here, but a lot of this area has already been, there's already been base put in. There's already some rock there that was put in ahead of authorized, in talking to Rick Reed. So there is some stuff there. Ultimately, we don't have a easement or anything that says that that can happen, but we are working toward, the plan to establish a more permanent road there in conjunction with the well. So.
Yeah, traffic is one of the biggest ones for me too. It's the way that is all set up in that whole neighborhood, most of the traffic comes through the high school, middle school parking lots. Those aren't technically city roads, that's school property. It's supposed to be 15 miles an hour. I know people don't drive 15 miles an hour through there. Now you're talking about having another 120 cars coming through there possibly, plus with all the other homes that are built in that area over the last two plus years. That's a lot of traffic coming through roads that don't have sidewalks. People walk the roads right through there. There's a lot of, younger kids walking, riding bikes to school, coming through that area. Was anything thought of for that?
In terms of
putting new sidewalks in, having...
There are sidewalks existing out in the development. Some of them end in Ardmore areas and things of that nature. Certainly, if the property owners in Ardmore and all those areas want to pay for, we want to put in sidewalk and especially assess them back for that cost, we can do that as part of it. But in terms of Sandmar development, it has been developed with sidewalks. Yes, those are the sidewalk all around this property. There's a boulevard. It goes all the way out to the school. We've talked to the school about the development in terms of, crossing and just if there's more people walking in that area, putting in a lighted sign or something of that nature. So there's been a lot of considerations made from a safety perspective in that regard. But to go to the people and some of these areas that don't have sidewalk and say, let's put sidewalk in, I think you're going to have some people not want to do that and pay for that. Beyond that, the addition of the other road that we just talked about is Ringstead has always been a component of this. And you look at the original planned unit development, the number of units going into this area, if it had been developed out, would have had more development in this area, right, than what's being proposed today. So, I think while, yes, there is going to be an increase of traffic, the idea of putting Ringstead in, which is in the plan, and making improvements to some of the crossings on the state highway, which are difficult to begin with based on the fact that there aren't intersections, but we can work through that just like we do up the street where there are, apartments and houses that directly cross intersections to go to the school. So in terms of overall, traffic patterns and what, it isn't dissimilar to what's already in the area.
On such a large-scale project, does the city ever require a bond to protect, in case the road is damaged or?
Yeah, we have bonding for everything.
Okay.
Yes. That's all part of the permitting costs and whatnot, yeah. So.
Okay.
More questions or discussions? If there is no more discussion, this time I would entertain a motion to approve the SC Swiderski project for a PUD overlay and an R3 base zoning and recommend to the Common Council for final approval.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Is there a second to the motion? One last time, is there a second to the motion?
Do you want a second?
I will second the motion. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I was gonna make a motion with amendments, so I don't know if we wanna.
What amendments would you like to make?
If we, I was going to motion that we approve the PUD to go to the Common Council with the changes that are outlined in the MSA memo that the city administration has given us, specifically pointing out the stormwater calculations for the 100-year storm, the draining of the parking lot for shallow slopes. I'm not going to list every single individual one, but there are recommendations from MSA in the city that I want to see in the PUD before it would be brought to Common Council. And that would be the only way that I would support the motion moving forward.
So your amendment would be to approve with the inclusion of the MSA proposals.
Yes, with the addressment of the concerns brought up in the MSA memo that the city administration has given.
Our intent is to make those changes, so everybody's aware. We don't plan to, and we think it's logical to do these things. So like I said, it's just we're in that window of opportunity. We can still make revisions of the plan. They're not signed, sealed, delivered by the state, so it's easy enough to make. I know we go in front of council next week, and I don't know if we'll have the amendments done by then. We'll probably have to make sure all the calcs are ran, but regardless of what the calculations say, we'll make sure that the infrastructure is set up to be able to handle whatever the modeling tells us for the 100-year event. So I just want to make that clear that it is our intent to address the items, like I said, whether it's the freeboard or the culvert size or some of those items, it shouldn't be an issue, and it is our intent to address those. So we don't have any issue with the what was proposed by MSA. So
would you accept those amendments?
I'll accept the amendments.
And I accept them as a seconder.
I guess my last question, we're up for discussion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is I noticed you had the fire department okayed or they reviewed the plan, but there's nothing about the police department for traffic flow.
Yeah, there's been no concerns raised by the police department regarding the development.
So they did look at it?
Yep, we've looked at it.
Okay. That's good, thank you.
I'm actually going to I want to make a motion to table the PUD. Table the discussion on the motion.
Is there a second to the motion to table? Is there a second to table, or on the motion to table?
May I ask a question? How long does that delay?
Indefinite.
Tabling is indefinite.
We'd have to make a motion to untable.
To undo it, yes. So it wouldn't go to council, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Last time, is there a second to the motion to table? Hearing none, the motion to table fails for lack of second. Back to discussion on the original motion.
And then if I can just make my final points. I still have the concerns on the floodplain, stormwater management, even groundwater. I know they didn't focus on it that much, but I think we heard adequate concern from the people in the neighborhood. Even though we haven't gotten a report from the police, we have assurances that the police have looked at it. I don't know how well the police can study an addition of 64 units in that area, and especially with the traffic patterns that we've discussed. And then lastly, I mean, how it fits with the neighborhood. Ultimately, the plan commission is fit with the plan of the city and how that works. Everything neighboring it is R1, unless you go, of course, way down on Pleasant Street, but that's been commercial buildings. So I don't think it fits within the zoning or in the plan for the city there, as well as my other concerns, so I'm still a no.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion?
I would just like to mention, with our site planning, we did try to incorporate, we try to move things towards a, lower to a higher density. We try to structure our buildings accordingly. So you'll see on our buildings that are fronting the two main streets there, those are single level attached garages, very similar to what you'd see in a single, R1 district. And then as you actually go further into the site, that's where you put the higher density, a little bit farther away from the single family home. So I agree to his point, it's to have two land uses that close. We do try to, blend things in, we don't just necessarily try to put a two-story typical apartment building right across from a house. We try to, like I said, put buildings from our portfolio that are more matching of a residential single-family aesthetic and then blend that into a more of a higher density apartment. So I just want to say we did try to take that into account with our site planning by going from, our lower density buildings towards, the single family homes. And then as we get further away from the single family homes is where you'll find the higher density buildings.
And I did see the note in your landscape proposal that you're adding up to 20 trees for additional masking.
Correct. Yeah, because there is one portion of the site there where there's a two-story building, but pretty much all, as much as we could, the single level living houses are all fronted along the streets to more or less match with the R1 adjacent zoning. So, but yes, the 2-level building that will be there will have, landscape trees in front of it, because we also wanted those there for people turning off Sandmar, and I believe that's Pleasant there. If there's headlights shining towards the buildings, those trees will help, block any sort of headlights too. So it'll obviously be, essentially not hiding it from Pleasant Street, but, provide some concealment of the building, and then also whether it be for lighting purposes or visual ambiguity purposes. So I just wanted to make the mention that we do try to take that into account the most we can when situations like this, we're going from a single family residential to a higher density residential. We do try to put our lower density buildings closest to the single family homes. So.
Yeah, I did take a pretty close look at the landscaping plan, and that was something that I had some concerns about when I was first looking at plans, is the Huntington unit on the very south side of the proposed site, southwest corner. As you're coming down Sandmar, you're kind of coming right at that building, and I know the backside of those buildings just visually are pretty homogeneous. They're kind of the same, right? It's the same siding, but you guys have put in your plan like a 1.5-inch sapling of an oak, I think. So that's about a 10-foot tree right away in a planting, and I think there's 4 of them maybe on that. And then of course there's some landscaping that's proposed for around the building itself. And I think the point that I always think of is I've definitely seen developments that the building is just placed and it's finished, and then you drive by and you just see the big tan building. And that I don't think is what you guys are proposing. And I think for me personally, that's something I look at and I say, okay, well, it's been thought about. There's actual trees that are being planted. It's not just little pines or shrubs or something to try and break it up or make, we have a point system, but it's not just to get the bare minimum points necessary. It's actually something there to make it fit in with, there's already some 10, 20-foot trees in that area. So I think that's reasonable. I know it doesn't technically meet the point system based on what we require, but I was kind of unclear on exactly how our point system was supposed to work as well. So,
well, I can speak to that a little bit too. It gets tougher on these smaller sites because, we don't like to place, trees of that nature over like a water pipe or a sewer pipe. Because if you have to dig that pipe up, you have to remove any sort of trees from that area. And kind of same with like any of the stormwater conveyance areas. If there's a swale to convey water, you don't want to plant the tree in the middle of it that's going to disturb water flows and such. So that's why it was maybe a little bit on the tougher side to fully meet the point system, because within a smaller site like that, when you're trying to avoid utilities, when you're trying to avoid stormwater conveyance, there's just only so much reasonable, space to plant mature trees,
And there are city-owned trees on the terraces, I believe. There's not really sidewalk proposed, so there's not really.
There's a sidewalk there existing.
There is existing, okay, so there's city-owned trees already there, and those will be, I'm assuming, minimally affected. I know some of the driveways might.
Yeah, some might, and we've worked with Adam on that, you know, yeah. If there are any that are removed, we'll come, you know. It'll honestly be better, because they'll be better spaced out along the site, because the areas where there's trees now, they're kind of more clustered. It's like, so I think any of them that are impacted will be sure to, you know, place in other areas within the right of way.
One last time, any further discussion? So the motion is to approve the SC Swiderski project for a PUD overlay of a R3 base zone and with the inclusion of the MSA suggestions, and recommend to have roll call vote, please.
Grant.
Yes.
Dankert.
Yes.
Dretsky.
No.
Matthias.
No.
Boscoe.
Yes.
Split.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-2.
Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to project updates and staff reports. Do we have any further project updates?
So, we will have a meeting next month likely. There will be a tax incremental finance district depending on the council meeting. Everybody's leaving, sorry. Everybody's moving.
There's a lot going on.
And then, in addition to that, the site plan that was approved by...
One second. If you could carry your conversations on out in the lobby, please.
Sorry, we're all young, we can hear, right?
Please take your conversations to the lobby.
If you could take your conversations to the lobby, we're still in the meeting.
Cal. Obviously.
No, it's okay. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, so we'll have a finance district. We're preparing those things in tandem with the PUD that was just referred to the council, as well as then you had, I think last month, approved the car wash development. They will be coming back and asking for kind of moving forward with the coffee shop version of the plan first. Their initial plan was to do the car wash first. Now I think they're going to do, so they have to come back. And so I think that will be on for next. In addition to that, the housing study did recommend we review some zoning codes and whatnot. So we may begin a project to review some of that as well. There needs to be a kind of a bigger look at the entire code because, you know, sections in industrial and commercial just haven't kept up with kind of time, or they are hopefully in the next couple months. So that's what's happening.
Can you update on any of the proposed well sites? Any news on that? Part of the because that's part of the TID.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that with part of the TID, but you know, there's a lot of different things going on within the Sandmar development area related to the TID development and Rick Reed beyond the SCS Ripon project. So I kind of showed you a map, so that's more to come.
That it?
That's it.
All right. Future agenda items from members? No? All right. Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Not all at once. Not that fast.
All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned at 8:42.